You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for Sports Illustrated for various SEC-related things. But on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. You can make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be asking the question, is Reed Sheppard underrated? I think the answer is yes. I want to explain why on today's episode. Also, if you've been paying attention to Kentucky basketball's social media, they've been posting a lot of different highlight clips from practices and such. So we're going to dive into what we've noticed about those different videos, what we've noticed about the different lineups that they have out there, and just going to kind of give some more thoughts on this team right now without Aaron Bradshaw as they make their way closer and closer to the global jam. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everybody out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you have not subscribed to the channel already, please go ahead and do so. If you're watching on YouTube, trying to get to 5K subs before the start of the season, I think we can do it. I've got faith in you guys. If you're listening on podcast, follow along wherever you're listening as well and leave a review. Let me know what you think about the show. Thank you so much for kind of hanging out with me over these past couple of months here as we have officially gotten into the offseason. Want to reiterate something that I noted in June several times. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday is the schedule for the offseason for this show. Once we hit August, we are back to 5 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And on this Monday afternoon, we are going to be asking the question, like I mentioned earlier, is Reed Sheppard underrated? So I mentioned those highlight reels earlier, the different videos from practice that Kentucky's been putting out. It's not been anything insanely flashy. There have been some lobs, some dunks, some three-point shots chucked up and hit, but I don't think that there's anything out of the ordinary. I think that you would note about what Kentucky is doing. Now, I will say, once you actually dive into the player rotation and who's playing where and what's happening, I think there's some really interesting things that we need to note. But again, that's for the back half of this episode. But as of, I believe it was earlier today, it might have been yesterday afternoon, Kentucky basketball posted, actually this was just a few hours ago, a highlight reel of simply Reed Sheppard doing his thing, getting some shots up, having a couple really nice passes to a couple of big men down low. And it really did start to spark a question, a thought for me that you guys have been discussing in the comments on and off for weeks now since Reed Sheppard got onto this team, and we've kind of been getting things together as far as the actual lineup, as the actual roster goes, at least how the coaching staff's been doing that over these past few weeks. And a lot of you guys in the comments have been really high on Reed Sheppard, and you've been saying things that I've said to you, I think occasionally in live streams. I wanted to make an episode here. Reed Sheppard, I think, is severely underrated for Kentucky basketball this upcoming season, and here's why. I think what Kentucky has lacked over the past several seasons has been an isolation scorer, somebody that can go and get their shot up whenever they need to, somebody that can take a step back and knock down a three-pointer if they need to as well, somebody that can create offense on their own without having to rely on other players or the sets to get their points. Reed Sheppard, if you go and watch his high school tape, he's not a particularly impressive athlete. Obviously, he's an athlete, but in terms of being able to jump out of the gym, he's not crazy when it comes to things like, a crazy defense or getting in space and getting out in transition and doing highlight dunks or things like that. He's not going to wow you in that category. He's more of a throwback type of guy, but whenever you watch his game, you'll notice a few things about him. I think the first thing that you notice about him is the poise, the calmness, the readiness, the anticipation on offense. It just seems like everything with Sheppard, alongside several other guards on this team, just flows. It's just natural. It just looks like he's not having to work necessarily sometimes when it comes to getting his points, whether that be off ball or whether that be with the ball in his hands. He can also, by the way, I'm not saying that he can't dunk. I mean, obviously in the highlight reel, he did do that exact thing. It threw down a one-handed dunk. But Sheppard, I think, gives Kentucky another option when it comes to bailout scoring. I think last season we saw this really rear its head during non-conference play, obviously throughout SEC play, but it was most frustrating, I think, for Kentucky fans whenever they realized, oh man, Cason Wallace is good, Jacob Toppin's good, Oscar Tshiebwe's good, but we don't have a guy that we can go to in the late minutes of a game when we need a bucket. We don't really have that clutch type of guy, and our point guard's 5'6", 5'7". Doesn't matter, he was short. You now have a 6'4" combo guard in Reed Sheppard that can come off your bench and, quite honestly, I think play a Devin Booker type of role for you. I think he's an excellent shooter. The numbers reflect that. We're going to dive into that in just a second. But look at what Kentucky has in their backcourt this year. You've got a couple of guys that are over 6'2", 6'3", that can really bounce, that are crazy special when it comes to distributing the basketball, handling the basketball, and then shooting as well. Sheppard, I think, is going to be overshadowed. That's just how things are going to go this offseason. But once you actually get into non-conference play, once you get into SEC play, I think you're going to see Reed Sheppard rotating in and playing a lot more minutes than maybe some people are currently projecting him out to do. There are some different things. You'll scroll on Instagram, you'll go on websites, and you'll read what different people think about the lineups and the rotations, and they'll have Reed Sheppard as the 9th or the 10th man in the rotation. And sure, maybe that's fair right now, but I really do think Sheppard's making an impact here in practice, and based on what practice reports have been, he has been scoring at a higher level and playing at a higher level than anticipated. Just to give you an example of somebody that we've made friends with here on the program, Tristan Ferris at TristanUDA on Twitter, tweeted out earlier, quote tweeted the highlight reel actually, and said, when Kentucky signed Reed Sheppard, John Calipari said, Reed isn't here because he wanted to be here. He's here because he's a really good player who can help this team win. And Tristan noted from practice reports, Reed is going to make an impact sooner than expected. I'm excited to see what Reed Sheppard does for this team this upcoming season, because if the points don't come from the other two players in the backcourt, I strongly believe, and I you can count Antonio Reeves in there as well, I strongly believe that Reed Sheppard will end up being one of the more consistent players on this team. Go and look at his numbers from his year in the state of Kentucky in high school basketball these past two seasons. During his junior year, he averaged 25.5 points, 7.6 assists, 6.8 rebounds, and 4.4 steals per game. Played in the McDonald's All-American game, obviously, this year. In his senior year, he averaged 22.5, 8.5 assists, and 8.4 rebounds per game. He finished his high school career with over 3,700 points, 1,214 assists, and 1,050 rebounds. Go and look at his shooting numbers, though. He shot 47% in his freshman year, and every single year after that, he shot 50+% from the floor, 55.8 in his junior year, 53.7 in his senior year, and then 40.9 and 38.2% in his junior year and senior year from outside the arc. Kid is a shooter. Kid is a bucket getter. He's got the size to play, I think, solidly in Kentucky's offense. Reed Sheppard will be getting more minutes, more production, and I think more highlights as well. I think we're going to be seeing more of these type videos in the months to come here whenever we actually wade into the seasons. If you've got any thoughts on Reed Sheppard, if you've got any thoughts on where he lands in this Kentucky rotation, you can leave that in the YouTube comments below. All right, I want to get to here what this entire Kentucky rotation looks like for the Wildcats this upcoming season based off of what we've seen in the highlight reels. And I understand, I want to preface this, I understand that there's not a ton that you can genuinely take away from the first few practices, but there are a couple of things that I do want to note that you and I have actually been discussing quite a bit, and we're getting some clarity on. Before we get to that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You can take your first swing at betting on MLB action over at FanDuel, and you can get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. So if you bet $20, you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. If you're a Braves fan like me, you're probably going to see that in the first inning. We've been seeing a lot of really good Braves baseball as of late. Got a huge series against the Tampa Bay Rays this upcoming weekend. Cincinnati Reds are playing very well. St. Louis Cardinals, I believe, playing decently as well. If you want to lay down anything on any of your favorite teams, you can head over to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel.com/lockedon, again, to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. That is FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, I appreciate you guys watching. If you've got any thoughts on Reed Sheppard, I am very curious to see what you guys say now that I've done an episode, essentially, on Sheppard. You can leave that in the YouTube comments below, at Locked On UK on Twitter. I'm always there as well. So we have been seeing some different highlight videos outside of Reed Sheppard's getting posted to Kentucky basketball social media. And if you slow them down, if you kind of pay attention to who's on the white team, who's on the blue team, what's going on here, I think that there are some interesting notes that we can take away from these rotations, so to speak. Before I get into it, I just wanted to reiterate again, is this going to be how Kentucky looks when the fall comes around? No. Aaron Bradshaw is going to be healthy. It's going to add, I think, a different dynamic to this team, especially with how they want to play their bigs. Right now, they're being forced to play Trey Mitchell. Are they going to do that as much as center in the fall? I'm not sure. Global Jam's going to be a very interesting time regardless, so let's just kind of take what we can get at this point. So in the first video that Kentucky posted, having a stroke per usual on the podcast. In the first video that Kentucky posted, this was the lineup with the white team. You had Rob Dillingham, Justin Edwards, Antonio Reeves, Ugonna Onyenso, and then I believe you had Brandon Canada at some point in there on the white team. Reed Sheppard was on the white team as well at some point, swapped from the blue. Antonio Reeves was also on the blue team at one point. He swapped from the white. On the blue team, though, you saw Jordan Burks, Adu Thiero, DJ Wagner, Joey Hart, and Reed Sheppard. Again, Sheppard swapped. So a couple of things to note here. In these three videos, you never saw DJ Wagner and Rob Dillingham wearing the same color jersey. They were always on opposite sides of the team. Blue or white. And you typically saw Rob Dillingham wearing white. And I don't know if your ones are your whites and your twos are your blues, or your ones are your blues and your twos are your whites. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the lineup with Justin Edwards, Rob Dillingham, Ugonna Onyenso, Antonio Reeves, that's probably your ones. At the very least, it's the guys that you feel, or it's partially some guys that are older on the team and partially some guys that I think you feel pretty confident in at their respective positions. This is a conversation that you and I have been having for quite some time this offseason about where DJ Wagner and Rob Dillingham are going to play. Obviously, Kentucky has to make a decision here as to whether or not they start Rob or Wagner at point guard. I'm going to continue to say I like Rob Dillingham at point. Some of you disagree with that in the YouTube comments. Some of you say that it is what's going to happen for UK. I just like the way that he operates at point guard, and we're getting to see him run with primarily what we expect to be the starters this upcoming season as the number one. At least it looks like. And now you see in different clips, you see him off ball, you see him doing different things, but he's not going to have the ball in his hand all of the time. You also get to see DJ Wagner block his shot at one point here in one of these videos. So Wagner and Dillingham are not on the court at the same time. Is it because Kentucky feels like they're trying to figure out this battle and so they're splitting them up between teams? Is it because that they knew heading into this that they're never going to have the two on the court at the same time, and so they're just trying to figure out where their roles are respectively with different players that they're mixing and matching during practice here? I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but what we can note is that they're not on the same teams. So just take that for what it is. Before we move along to the second and third videos, 24/7 Sports today released an article just strictly predicting Kentucky starting five. Brad Crawford did it. If you want to go check it out, it's over on 247sports.com. DJ Wagner is at the 2 in this starting lineup. According to Brad Crawford, he thinks that it'll be Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner, Antonio Reeves, Justin Edwards, and Trey Mitchell as the starters this upcoming season. I think that Aaron Bradshaw is going to be your starting power forward. if John Calipari was as excited as he was earlier this offseason about playing Hugo and Bradshaw, 1 and 2 7-footers on the court, I can only imagine he's going to take that opportunity to run with that as a starting lineup. Now, is it going to get a ton of minutes? I don't know, considering Trey Mitchell exists. But I just don't see Justin Edwards at 6'7" in a starting lineup sliding down to the 4. He's a wing. He's a small forward. Brad Crawford said Justin Edwards is going to have to play the 4. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Not with a healthy Bradshaw in your lineup. Even if you don't have Bradshaw in your lineup, I still don't see Justin Edwards at the 4. I see Trey Mitchell at the 4 because Trey Mitchell can handle the ball and he can shoot. He's also got a little bit more weight on him, and he's also taller. Why not let that be your power forward? He's a solid power forward. And then let Hugo be your center. I don't understand why that's the decision from 24/7. Again, I like Wagner at the 2. I really like Wagner at the 2. But you also have the questions of whether or not Antonio Reeves ends up getting a start at the 2. And if he's starting somewhere, it's either the 2 or the 3. And like we've just previously discussed, Justin Edwards should be at small forward. So I just don't. I like the lineup. Let's be clear. I think it would be a good lineup. It'd be a solid lineup. I just don't see the reason that you wouldn't put out your sophomore center that's put on 20 pounds and looks like a tank. By the way, him and Hugo and Adu Thiero look insane compared to where they were last year. Been getting their weight up, obviously, in the gym. But I don't see why you wouldn't put a 6'11", 7-foot player at center. Put your 6'9" guy at power forward. Put your 6'7" guy at small forward. And then have one of the best backcourt tandems in the country. Like just let it rock. Whether that be Reeves and Dillingham, whether that be Wagner and Dillingham, whether it be Wagner and Reeves, you could mix and match here. It doesn't really matter. But I'm in disagreement with 24/7 Sports' lineup because I think that there are different things Kentucky's going to end up doing with this unit. Could that be how they do it for Global Jam? Sure, that could be a lineup they throw out. They could start Brennan Canada for all we know. We don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. In the second video with the white team, you saw Rob Dillingham, Reed Sheppard, Trey Mitchell, Jordan Burks. I did not catch the 5th player there. And then in the for the blue team, I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to read through my notes here. In the blue team, you had Antonio Reeves, Justin Edwards, Adu Thiero, and DJ Wagner. So again, only got 4 players for each team there. And once again, you'll notice Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner on different teams. Justin Edwards now with the blue team with Antonio Reeves and Adu Thiero. Maybe it is truly just mixing and matching between these 2 different point guards and trying to figure out how they want to run this stuff. Third video, with the white team, we saw several players with the white team. Joey Hart, Reed Sheppard, Trey Mitchell, Rob Dillingham, Jordan Burks, Reed Sheppard also swapped to the blue. In the highlight video for, I think it was just exclusively Sheppard's highlight video. Justin Edwards, Hugo, and Thiero were also on the blue team as well. So if I'm not mistaken, we're also seeing Kentucky split Hugo and Mitchell away from each other. I believe that's the case here currently. So you're seeing your 1s, so to speak, potentially, and your 5s split. Is it because you're trying to run a balanced lineup in between white and blue in practice? That could be the case here. That could be the situation we're looking at. I just think it's very interesting to note that that's how Kentucky's approaching it this offseason with practice. That we're not seeing yet. We're not seeing DJ Wagner and Rob Dillingham on the court at the same time. Now, could we see Trey Mitchell and Hugo on the floor at the same time in a rotation during the Global Jam? Sure. We could see Wagner and Rob also on the floor at the same time as well. Global Jam is going to be a really interesting topic of conversation for us here to kind of flesh out what these guys, not necessarily by position and by minutes, but what does their role look like? What are they within sets? What does John Welch add to this offense that we maybe get to see during this national or global event, I should say, coming up here in just about, 10 days? I'm excited about it. If you've got any thoughts on Kentucky's rotations, what you've seen from the highlight reels, you can leave all of that in the YouTube comments below. And I think that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Again, any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave them in the YouTube comments below, or you can hit me on the socials. I will see you all on Wednesday for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Happy 4th of July, everybody, and God bless.